So we're learning. We're going to go back a second, a few lines on the Gemara that we learned last week. So we're holding the end after the story in the Chumash goes. So after Bilam, the evil who suggested he was trying to curse the Jewish people, who was commissioned by the king of Moab and Midyan, the kings of Moab and Midyan, to curse the Jewish people. So Hashem didn't allow him to curse. So he says before he leaves, so to say, he leaves his failed mission. So he says, and we learned this. So we're going to go through this faster. He says like this. Hinini hoylech la'ami. Hey Avi, we're just going back a few lines to the beginning of the story of the daughters of Midyan. So he says, Hinini hoylech la'ami lecha i'atzcha ashayasa amazalamcha. He says, I'm going back home, going back to my people. So let me tell you, yatzcha means from the word eitzah. Let me give you advice what these people are going to do to your people. So Amchel Am Hazeh. So but his advice was really what the Jewish people are going to suffer from the hands of the daughters of Midyan. So why does it say what the Jewish people are going to do to your people? It should have said Amcha, your people. What are they going to do? Am Hazeh, to the Jewish people. Midbayle should have said. So Rabbi Barkana said. Rabbi Barkana said, it's like a person who curses himself. He's talking in a roundabout way. And it really means someone else. So we're not going to do the Rashis. We did the Rashis last week. The Rashi basically says the idea is that we know again that the advice of the king of Midyan sending his daughters out, the daughters of Midyan, to go and seduce and corrupt the Jewish people, that led to a plague that killed 24,000 Jewish people. This is right before the Jewish people entered the land. This advice was given by Bilam. So it's not so. It was something that he advised them to do to the Jewish people, not vice versa. So either that the Torah was talking in around the back way, that the Torah didn't want to accept that that the Jewish people that Bilam was going to say negative about the Jewish people, but vice versa, or he himself didn't want to attribute that as if Balak was asking the king of Moab and Midyan were asking what he should do. He said as if I'm just going to advise you. Okay. So what did he say? We're just going to do the original text because we did this last week. Amar lahem, he said to them, meaning Bilam said to the kings of Midyan and Moab. Again, in the Mefarshim, it seems like the king of Moab didn't subscribe to this and he left. He didn't. This ended up becoming an idea of Tzur. Tzur was the king of Midyan. He was the one. It was the daughters of Midyan, not the daughters of Moab. But he spoke to both of them. He said, Amar lahem, he said to them, Elokehem, the God of the Jewish people, Shal Elu, Saine Zima. He totally dislikes lewdness, lewd behavior. Veheim misavim l'kli pishtain. So one is that God gets really upset if people behave in an inappropriate way sexually. And at the same time, if you want to know how to sort of say fish in the Jewish people, how to capture them, is that they have a soft spot, so to say, for linen. Kli pishtan means pishtan is linen, for linen clothing. And the reason, like Rashi says, is because that's what they were used to. They had linen in Egypt, and so they didn't have it in the desert because of the travels in the desert. So that's the first, what are you going to first do when you get out of the desert? So the first thing the Jewish people may be looking for is to buy linen. And that would be the way to get them to engage in the daughters of Midyan. We'll see how. Let me give you an advice. Set up different like tents, like an idea, basically like a shuk. Set up a marketplace. So they would come to, now you have to remember, if you just look at the geographical idea of it, the Jewish people left Egypt, so they're leaving along the Mediterranean, traveling at the end after the sin of crossing the Red Sea, coming back in, going all the way around south, coming all the way to the east entrance of Eretz Yisrael. So they spent 40 years in the desert, 38 years in a certain place. This is after we were holding this in our parsha that we're learning nowadays of the spies. Last week we learned about the spies. After the spies, they were decreed that they would have to remain 40 years in the desert. So they were in the desert. Now they're entering the land. So they're coming in from Eretz Yisrael from the east, which would be today towards Jordan, right? And in the areas of Jordan, it's already populated. It's not the desert. And in the population, they would go out and mingle with the population, maybe going to a market to make some purchases. No one bought anything in 40 years. So he says, let me give you an advice. They like set up tents. Set up prostitutes in these tents. Zekena mibachutz doesn't say if the elder women were prostitutes or just older women on the outside. V'yalda mibifnim, this was his advice, and the younger girls on the inside, meaning inside the tents. V'yimkru lam klei pishtan, and let them sell these. This is what's going to get their attention, is this linen garments. Again, we're not going to do the Rashi. Just the Marsha says that linen garments, again, was something that they were used to from Egypt. Again, although they were kids in Egypt because the elders that died out in the deserts. We're talking about, at this point, all the Jews that were living, aside from the ones that weren't involved in the different sins, like the tribe of Levi, the women weren't decreed, but the young men that were out there were all men that were in their early late teens when they left Egypt. So, but whatever, they were accustomed to the idea of linen garments, or would have liked to have had it. Maybe they heard about it, the tales from their parents, so they would be interested in buying them. So Asalahan, so they did it. They set up these kloim, these enclosures of like tents. Mihar Chelek, which is the mountain of snow, like we said, the Hermon, ad base hayishimois, until the yishimois. Again, the yishimois we have later when we talk about the well of Miriam that you were able to see it from the yishimois. It seems like the yishimois would be from the Hermon is northeast of Eretz Yisrael, right? That's the Golan Heights, the corner of the Golan Heights towards Syria today. It seems like most maps that people map out, let's say the tribe of Menashe, they had the most northern eastern section of Eretz Yisrael. So the tribes, half of tribe of Menashe, Gad, and Ruvain stay on the east side of the river after this whole story. So they are on top of the most northern eastern section of the east side of the river, of the Jordan, is Menashe. From the maps, it seems like that I've looked at, that what's today considered the Upper Golan Heights or the Hermon Mountain was not part of Menashe at the time. It doesn't seem like it, at least from what I'm looking at. It seems like it's kind of what's today the southern part of the Golan Heights. But let's say they set up these tents from the Har Chelek, from the Hermon to the Yishimois, and from the Yishimois, you're looking down towards the it's more south. So you could see into the Kinneret. Somewhere I remember that the Yishimos is by Har Carmel, but that wouldn't make sense in this case. And he set up, like he suggested, these prostitutes, an elder woman from the outside, and the younger girls on the inside. So they're going around like any market shopping, right? You buy food, you drink, you look around, you shop. It's like an open market. And they went out to check out the market. So the elder woman, which basically, this is a trap. So the elder woman is standing on the outside, and she says, then maybe you're looking for linen garments. So Zakena Imeres B'Shava. So the elder woman would say, give a good price. It means the value price. It should B'Shava means what it's worth. Again, it's we when we read about the what's it called, the desert, you think the Jewish people living in this vacuum, in this bubble, although they were in a kind of a bubble in the clouds, meaning literally in the clouds that surrounded the camp, but they knew what the value of things were, and they knew what the value of these clothing were, and they knew if it was shavah, if it was worth it, if they were getting a discount or a deal. And the young girl would offer the discount. So what happens is this is how they would trap them. So they would go outside and say, oh, okay, this is whatever, this is value price. And then the girl says, well, inside the tent, there's more privacy, other people not looking, maybe their wives are not around. So here they start showing them the same garments, but for cheaper. And they do this 2-3 times. So they're becoming familiar, they're shopping, they're becoming, what they say, VIP clients. And Rashi says, when the Jewish people would ask, Rashi's like getting into the details, would ask, what's the value of this? So the elder woman would say the value in the proper price. And the young girl would say a cheaper price for the garments. And they would say this would happen repeatedly in different purchases, 2-3 times. So the idea is that they would become comfortable and accustomed. Okay, so now that she gets the younger girl would get them into the tent. She would say to them, the younger one would say to these clients, the Jewish people, these Jewish men, Hariyatki ben Bais, you're already local, you're already a member of my family. Shave, come, feel comfortable, take food, right? She had her local Amoni wines. Like we learned last week, they did yain stam means non-kosher wine that was not specifically used for pouring on the altars of the idols. So yain nesach, which means poured wine that's poured for the intention of sacrificing of idols, was forbidden biblically. That was obviously biblically, but later there's an argument when, but at some point, either Daniel or Pinchas, after the story itself, was when they said that not only yayin esach, wine that's used as avodah zarah, but wines that were used in general, do not drink non-kosher wine, non-Jewish wine. So at that point, yet the decree wasn't kicked in. So that answers why they would drink the wine. It means the girls didn't get them to violate the traditions and the Torah just like that. It had to come down to bringing them into a moment of desire. So first, to get them to that moment, they had to get them to drink wine to get loose. The drinking the wine, they wouldn't have drinking non-kosher wine if it was forbidden. But those points, yain stam wasn't forbidden. So Amr Lighter, do you want to drink wine? Given shashasam, once they drank wine, bar boy, so it burned within them, meaning their desires started to cook up, and that's when the plan kicked in. So, like Rash says, Bar kol tachshitin shataroitza. She would also say, choose whatever kind of clothing you like. Tsar tsari noides, there's flasks. Boyer by shayim mishtachir, they would get a little drunk. Boyer by yetzahara, what was burning the yetzahara, the evil inclination. Okay, so it explains as we learned this last week ago, again goes into the difference between yayin esach and yayin stam of the pouring wines and the regular non-kosher wine. According to most opinions, according to most opinions, the Pinchas also, after this story, because the wine led the men to sin with the daughters of Midyan, that let them. So what happened actually is because according to most opinions, the question is what really did Bilam suggest? It says, let me suggest to you. What was the suggestion? So the most Mefarshim say, it's brought down over here, I think in the name of, who's it say it over here? Is the Masha? He says that I think the Masha and then Yaakov, that the Bilam didn't suggest the idol worship. What happened was the Jewish people started to, like we're going to see now, they started to sleep with the daughters of Midyan. And from sleeping daughters of Midyan, the daughters of Midyan got them in the moment of desire to worship their idols. And what really upset Hashem, of course, was in general the whole behavior, but specifically that they went and they dropped everything. They served the idols just to be able to give in to their desires because they kind of said, you can't sleep with me unless you serve my idol. So but it says that Bilam didn't suggest that. Bilam just suggested, like he said, God doesn't like lewd behavior. He just figured that in a lewd behavior, that itself would weaken the Jewish people. The daughters of Midyan doubled down on that. They added to that also the idol worship. So that's why that's why they were punished. And that's why when Moshe Rabbeinu sent what happened was, we don't learn this in this story, but what happened was afterwards, 24,000 Jews died from this plague. And Moshe sent out Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the grandson of Aaron, who in this moment of lewdness, the head of the tribe of Shimon, like we learned, I think a few months ago, the head of the tribe of Shimon, he was himself got involved in the daughters of Midyan. It became the daughter of Tsur, the princess herself was sleeping with the prince of the Jewish people. It got into a really difficult situation. And Moshe, it was the regular crowd was losing it. Like, what's going on? Moshe's here. The prince of Shimon is sleeping with the daughters of Midyan. It was just really getting out of control. And that's what we learned. I think it was a few months ago when Pinchas, the grandson of Aaron, the son of Elazar, comes in and he kills the head of this is the Chumash tells us this, but the details we learned in the Gemara. Pinchas kills the head of the tribe of Shimon, and they stop the plague. They stop with the daughters of Midyan. Eventually, 24,000 people died in this plague. God, as a revenge what the daughters of Midyan did and the people of Midyan did to send their daughters out. This was a plan. It didn't happen by chance. So there was the battle of Midyan. And Pinchas went out with 12,000 men to fight the battle of Midyan. In there, they don't kill, the Moshe Rabbeinu was upset that they didn't kill the women because the women, Heim Heina, they were the ones who decided to take it even further than what Bilam said, was not only to sleep with the men, but to also suggest that they worship the Baal Pa'or, the idols. Hold on, so he says over here. Yeah, so that's what the Torah Chaim writes, that the proof is that the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu scolds the Jewish people at the time of Pinchas for not killing the women is because they were the ones themselves. They were the ones who brought on the idea of the worshiping of the idols. So that's where we're holding. So this is where we got to last week. Okay, so now we go further. Amar. So now in this moment of passion, she's with him privately in the tent, and she gives him wine. So she says, Hashmili. Hashmili in Rashi says, sleep with me. Then before anything got into action, she would say, Haitzia Yirasa, she took out her idol, Mitai Cheka, from under her clothing, she had hidden a little idol. Amr Laish, then she says to him, Avoid Liza, worship this idol before you have relations with me. Amr Allah, so he would say, the Jewish boy would say, Hala Yehudi ani. I'm a Yehudi, I'm a Jew. A Jew doesn't do that. I mean, he's losing himself. He shouldn't be with her alone in the tent also, but he wants to worship idols. Amrullah, she says, what's the big deal? All I'm asking you to do is to defecate in front of this idol, because that was the way the Pa'or was worshipped. There's different worships. There's the Chassidus that explains why they did that, what was the idea. But the way they served this idol was defecating in front of the Pa'or. The idea of psilus, that means the leftovers of this world. So he thought, and here in the brackets he quotes, he didn't know that that's the way you worship it. He thought they just wanted to defecate in front of the idol. He didn't understand what she wanted. And then she said no. Once she got him already hooked, she would say, then she says, another condition. You have to actually be a heretic. So you have to leave and deny the Torah of Moshe. It's brought down in Hosea. You have to remember, this was such a sin that it wasn't just a sin that happened at the time. Hosea, which is a prophet at the time of the first temple, he mentions the sin of Pa'or. That's a sin that stayed with the Jewish people. And it says, so in his admonishing the Jewish people, it says, but when they came to the Baal Pa'or, they separated themselves to the shameful item, and they became detestable, like that which is like that which they loved, meaning that they devoted themselves to the idol, and they left and they disgraced themselves by denying the Torah of Moshe. So Rashi says, Hashmi, what Hashmi means, have a shemeas tashmish. She would entice him to go to sleep with him. So he says, pure, the way they used to worship the Pa'or idol was by defecating in front of it. So he says, she said, in the beginning, she started off saying, all I'm asking you to do is to release yourself in front of this idol. And once he did it, she would say to him, Kafir b'Torah Moshe. As Rashi explains, how did she lead him on? First, she said, just defecate in front of the idol. Okay, he did it. And now what? He said, no, it's not enough. You have to deny the Torah of Moshe. You wouldn't have to shameful behavior. It says, here it says, bi'ahavam or ki'ahavam, because they had this desire, this nice to have relations. They became disgraceful. It means they were so burning with desire for these women that they were ready to do everything. It means they started off trying to hold back and saying we don't serve idols, but they lost all deterrence, and they just gave in to that. So that and the story is that from there died 24,000 people. It's one of the sad stories of the Chumash at the end of the Chumash before the Jewish people came in. So now the Gemara continues to analyze this story. The Gemara quotes the pasuk. It says before they went to these markets and met these women, it says Vayeshev Yisrael Bashitim. Shittim was the place where they met these women. So it says the Jewish people Vayeshev, they settled or dwelt in Shittim. Rabbi Elazar says Shittim Shema, that's the actual name of the place. It was called Shittim. However, Rabbi Yeshua says no. It was called Shittim Shinis Asku B'divrei Shtus. The word Shittim is alluding to the concept of shtus, foolishness. The reason the place was called Shittim was because they acted foolish by giving in to their desires. Again, in Chassidus, it explains the idea of the shtus of the daughters of Pa'or or the daughters of Midyan is called a shtus, foolishness beneath your brain, meaning to say you should. It was beneath them to behave this way, but although their logic said, "I'm a Jew, I shouldn't behave themselves this way," but they acted foolish because they couldn't control themselves. There's an idea of shtus to kedusha, which is foolish to be foolish for God, which is l'mayla min haseichel. It means even when sometimes your mind says, I shouldn't be so crazy for God. So that's the Atzei Shittim. Those were the cedar woods that built the Mishkan. Okay, that's based on the mimer of the Rebbe that he said in 1951 on his accepting leadership was the idea of the difference between shtus of Midyan and the shtus, the foolishness of to be a fool positively for God. And the idea is to switch that around, to turn to be a fool beneath your logic to a fool above your logic. Okay, let's continue with the Gemara. It says, then what happened afterwards? And they start to serve the idols. So this spiraled out of control. It didn't just happen like a quick act. It's turned into the plague, and it turned into Zimri, the head of the tribe of Shimon, facing Moshe and saying, "What's so wrong with the daughters of Midyan?" The whole story turned out of control. Rabbi Elazar Aimer, Arumas Paguben. What does it mean that they serve the idols? So Rashi explains, Arumas Paguben. The girls literally came naked to the men. That's the way they enticed them. Rabbi Shua Aimer Shnasu Kulam Bali Kroin. Similar idea that they all experienced seminal emission because of, again, being enticed by the daughters of Midyan. Rashi says, "Vatikra begufan v'tikren mashman lashon mikra." It says that he approached with nakedness. Okay, meaning to say not with clothing, but with nakedness. Once we're analyzing names of places like Shittim, why was it called Shittim? Because either the name or because the shtus, they acted foolishness. So now we're going to also analyze 40 years previously, when the Jewish people were attacked by Amalek. It says that he left the place of Refidim. So what's Refidim? So the Gemara, again, this has nothing to do with the story we just learned, but the idea of analyzing names of places. My Lashon Refidim, what does it mean Refidim? Which that was the place. Again, the Jewish people crossed the Red Sea, and on their way to Har Sinai, they encounter the tribe of Amalek, or the nation of Amalek, and they have the battle. That's when Joshua goes and battles against Amalek. So they're leaving Refidim. So again, the name Refidim tells us what was going on. Why were they vulnerable to Amalek at that time? So Rabbi Elazar says that Refidim Shema. That's again, Rabbi Elazar says that's its name. So he holds the same opinion as he said before. That's the names of the Torah are the names of the places. Rabbi Shua says no. It's in the name we could learn something. Sherifu atzma midivrei Torah. The name Refidim means that they loosened themselves from the words of Torah. They left the words of Torah and they became vulnerable to Amalek. Shnemer lo hifnu aves al banim mirifyayin yadayim. That they didn't, the fathers did not look back at to their children because they were rifyayin, they were loose with their hands, they didn't educate properly. So Rashi tells us, my Refidim. So Rashi is basically going to address the question, why are we talking about this now? So the Rashi answers, just like before, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shua had a disagreement on what is the meaning of the name Shittim, where the Jewish people were. Nakitnami Refidim also, we analyze the name Refidim, the Palig Bey, Bechihai Gavna, they also argue over here if the name Refidim means something. Okay. So, The fathers and the children, the parents didn't educate the children. So that's a lashon of rifayon, of loose-handedness. Mipnei rifyun yadayim shel Torah mitzvahs, because they had a loose hand of Torah mitzvahs, they didn't educate their children properly. Hachinami, so too, refidim rifayon yadayim klaim mipnei shiraf yadayim min Torah. They loosened their hands from Torah. So therefore, Rashi says that's why Ba'aleim Amalek came. So the difference between basically Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yeshua in how they look at things. Rabbi Elazar says a name's a name. Don't take it out of context. But Rabbi Yeshua says we have to analyze the name to understand. We can analyze the name to understand the story. So in Shittim, that's when they went with the daughters of Midyan, was because they were acting shtus, foolish. They gave in to their temptations, to their desires, instead of holding a cool head, so to say. And in the place of Rafidim, they were loose, running away from Torah, and that made them vulnerable to Amalek. It means Amalek, where would Amalek have the power to attack the Jewish people? Is because they weren't interested in going to Matan Torah. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan says, Kol makom shenemar v'yeshev, anytime you look in the Torah, and he says that the Jewish or so-and-so settled, Eini Lashon Sar, it's coming to tell us a bad story. Where do we have this? The first place is our story. V'yeshev Yisrael b'Shittim, that when the Jewish people were in Shittim, v'yochel on liznais al b'nai Moav, the people started to sleep with the daughters of Moab. Again, we're not going to get into the question of why, if it was Moab or Midyan. That's for when you learn Chumash. V'yeshev Yaakov be'eretz Meguri Aviv, be'eretz Canaan. Also, we find the word V'yeshev when it says after Jacob ran away from Esav, ran for 20 years to hide in his uncle Laban's house, gets married, has to run away from Laban, finally makes it home after all the troubles he went to. So how does the next parsha start? We all know the next parsha is Vayeshev. And right away Rashi jumps on that. He quotes our Gemara that Yaakov Vayeshev means something bad is about to happen. Yaakov tried to settle. He tried to say, I have enough running, enough exhaustion, enough stress. And that's when, boom, the story of Yosef happens. The brothers become jealous and they sell Yosef to Egypt. Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz Meguri Aviv be'eretz Canaan. Vayavi Yosef es tibasim ra'al aviyim. That's led to the story of Yosef tattletaling, so to say, on his brothers. That led to their jealousy. That led to him being sold. That eventually led to the Jewish people ending up in Egypt. That led to the 200 years plus of exile. It says Vayeshev Yisrael be'eretz Goshen. The Jewish people lived in the land of Goshen. What happened after that? Again, enslavement. Vayikru Yemei Yisrael Lamas, and that's when Yaakov dies. Vayeshev Yehuda Yisrael levetach. It says in the days of Solomon that when the Jewish people, Yehuda and the Jewish people, felt betach, felt secure, ish tachas gafne v'ish tachas te'inasai, under the leadership of Solomon in the glory days, everyone was betach in a good place, sitting under their vineyard and their fig tree. Vayakom Hashem Satan l'Shlomo. God sends the Satan, to cause trouble for Shlomo. And in what way did it show itself? With Hadad HaEdomi, Mizer HaMelech Hu Be'edo. Hadad the Edomi. So the story goes that David, his father, with Yoav, right, Ben Sruya, the general, Job, they subdued Edom. Edom was kingless under David. They didn't really set up king until Yehoshaphat, but he started to have trouble. Hadad ran away from David's people and made his way to Egypt, and then he married the Pharaoh's daughter or sister, but from this led that up until a certain point Shlomo lived in peace. But he started to have troubles. When did he have troubles? When the Jewish people felt secure. So from here, from all these cases, we're seeing something that there's a certain level of passive security that makes you vulnerable. Yaakov tried to be secure. He sits in, what does he want to do already? Like Rashi quotes, that we're going to learn that a person should never be too relaxed. You always have to have a certain tension for Torah mitzvahs. When you're too relaxed and you let down your guard is when bad things happen. He says, this teaches, he quotes that the Jewish people are not meant to live a life of relaxation and tranquility. Because Vayeshev means tranquility, where each individual is concerned with his own affairs and wrongly assumes that there's nothing left to repair in the world. That's not how a Jew views the world. A Jew always has to look, what can I be misakin? What can I fix? Dwelling, which implies a state of stagnation of that sort, is a formula for calamity. And that's what all the Mefarshim say. That it's this idea, like he quotes over here, the Torah Chaim says, a person has to make that this world is temporary. You're always looking, you're on the road, like a person's on a business trip, he or she. You don't have a set place. So you should always be a little bit unsettled. It's kind of part of the philosophy of the Jewish people to always be unsettled. When you're too settled or you think there's nothing to do, that's when things, Vayakum Hashem Satan l'Shlomo. God sends the Satan to Shlomo. Okay. It's an idea. It has to be analyzed. It's not a simple idea. It's not the norm, right? People don't, but that's the way the Jewish people are. He quotes over here. He quotes over here even a stronger idea. He says that anytime the Jewish people ever became comfortable, especially in exile, is when things hit them. Every time they thought, that's it, we finally found menucha, is when Hitler comes, or when Haman comes, or when Stalin comes, whoever that person is, the Spanish Inquisition comes, the expulsion of Spain comes. It's when the Jewish people feel that this is, in Spain, the golden age of Spain, we found the place until Mashiach comes, is that certain tranquility, that desire for tranquility, that Bikash Yaakov Leisha B'Shalgva, Yaakov wanted to sit in tranquility, but that doesn't work for Hashem. The Rebbe has many talks about this, about the idea of bikesh. It's not wrong to want tranquility, but the idea is to live it. You have to have a certain level of purpose in your life constantly, not to think that everything's just good and dandy. Okay, because when you have purpose and you have that urgency, you're always looking to do something, to accomplish something. Going back to our story. So Bilam suggests to Midyan and Moab this idea with the good daughters of Midyan. The Jewish people sin. 24,000 Jews are killed. The story of Zimri, a prince, is killed. This is we're going to all learn about this in the next few weeks in the parshas of Balak and Pinchas. That's coming up in a few weeks, 2-3 weeks. But then God sends out Pinchas, Moshe, and God sends out Pinchas with the army to destroy the people of Midyan. So it says, "V'smalche Midyan hargu al chaleihem." They slew the kings of Midyan, and Bilam ben Bahar hargu b'charv, and they kill Bilam ben Bahar with the sword. Bilam my boyhasam. So the Gemara asks, if you remember, right? We said in the beginning of the class today that Bilam says, "Let me suggest to you what to do before I leave." So if he left, and he didn't live over there, he didn't live, Midyan is south. He lived, if you remember the maps we brought up last time in Naharayim, he lived in northeast of Eretz Yisrael. So what was he doing there in the time of the battle? So Rabbi Yochanan says, "Shahalech litas schar esim v'arba elef shehipol misrael." He wanted to be paid. So remember, we learned about that the Bilam was all about money, right? It's all about riches, money, how much gold he wants, how much gold he thinks he deserves. So after he suggested that the daughters of Midyan seduced the Jewish people, and there was a plague from Hashem that killed 24,000 Jews, he wanted to be paid for that. So he came back to collect his payment, and that's when Pinchas went out with the army. So he was there, and he got killed. He was murdered. He was killed by the Jewish armies. Omer Marzutra bar Tuvia Omer Rav. So over here, Marzutra says in the name of the son of Tovia, says in the name of Rav, Hain Damrinchi, this is what people say. It's like an idea that Gamla Ozla Limiboy Karne, that the camel goes to seek horns. So Udne Dahavale Gazin, he goes to get horns, and they take from him his ears. Meaning Bilam comes to collect money, and he loses his life because he was in the wrong place at the right time, as far as we're concerned. Okay, so it says, Schar Choftal Alpha Misrael, Shahargu Batsase, Halach Little Mi Balak, Muzikni Midyan. He wanted Balak and the elders of Midyan to pay him for it. So it says, Gamla Tava Karne Kach Bilam Shol Schar Venera. Just like the camel goes to get the horn, so too he wanted to have payment. So what happens? Gazumine Chatchum, and he loses his ears. Means he goes to get something, and instead he loses something. Okay. Should we bring up the Mefarshim on this? Again, then Yaakov just adds, why did he feel that he should have money, should get paid, is because 24,000, we know 24,000 is a round number in the Jewish people. And so 24,000 is one less than 25. So he felt the Jewish people were weakened by the 24,000 people, by 24,000 dead. So he didn't just get 24,000 dead. He actually weakened the Jewish people, and therefore he felt that he accomplished something. So there's killing, and then there's actually accomplishing something. So he felt something that he accomplished something. The Jewish people were weaker, maybe they wouldn't be able to destroy Moab and Midyan. So they wanted to get he wanted to get paid for that. It says later in Joshua, it quotes Bilam ben Bar HaKaisim. It says Bilam, the son of Bar the Kaisim. He was a magician. He was so what's Kaisim Naviyu? He wasn't a Kaisim. He wasn't acting with magic. He was a prophet. So why did they call him the Kosem? So Rabbi Yochanan says, B'tchila Navi, he was a prophet. L'seif Kaisim, he lost his prophecy when he wanted to curse the Jewish people, but he lowered himself to magic, to other sources of power. Rapapa says, Hanudar Minashe, this is what people say, that miskine vishilte havai azvan legavri nagari. He says, Rapapa says that people say that a woman was was a descendant from the princes and rulers, and was she populated herself with the carpenters. Meaning, we'll see there's different explanations about this, but basically the idea is that he had a certain style of doing things. So if he didn't have his prophecy, he didn't just give up. He went to other powers. He wanted to be a powerful person, like a woman who's married to powerful people will even be a carpenter as long as he's doing something. Some people say it really means a person who's pulling the ropes of the boats. He says, Bilam ben Bar HaKaisim hargu b'char v'ahukra b'Yeshua chsiv. This verse is in Joshua, means the book of Joshua. When he started to curse the Jewish people, or he wanted to curse the Jewish people, God took away his prophecy and he became a kaisim. It says, Miskne v'shilte have, eishe saganim v'sarim haisa. It's like a woman who used to be a wife of great people, and then when she's no longer the wife of these great people, so Eisen the Gavr Nagar, Zinsa the Maishche Chavos Fina. She wants to, some people explain that she wants to be with people of action, of war. So she'll even go to people that are pulling the boats by rope, but she needs to be with a certain type of person, or Nagri Charashim, or someone who's a carpenter. But there's a woman that once she's with a certain type of person, it could be in the beginning with respectable people, but she's going to always go to the similar style of person, even if she's no longer with respectable people. This finishes the daf. We'll just see what Rabbi Steinzot says. See Rashi, who provides two explanations for the term nagari. Although the first appears to be based on a variant of reading nagadi. The Gaonim cite a variant reading avian instead of aziam, and explains that this is that it is a name of a Persian woman who descends from royalty and engages in the statius with one who pulls ships in the harbor, like Rashi says. Perhaps also based on the variant reading nagadi. The Ramah explains azian as meaning armed. A woman who marries a heavily armed warriors and was later widowed seeks another armed husband. So she's always looking for someone who's armed, even if it's on a lower level than what she was accustomed to. If she cannot find another warrior, she sells for a carpenter who also has iron tools. So similar iron tools of his trade that is somewhat similar to the weapons. So too, Bilam was initially a prophet, and when he no longer was capable of prophecy, he continued to foretell the future as a diviner, a kosem. Okay, let's continue with the story. So now, how did he die? It says, Hargu b'nei Yisrael b'cherv al chalalehem. That Bilam, the son of Bar, the diviner, did the children of Israel slay, it says, with the sword. Among the rest of their slain. Omar Rav says, Shikimu by arba misas. They killed him with all four deaths that are a tribute to the court of the Jewish people, right? We've learned about skila, sreifa, hereg, and chenek, right? There's four types of death that are capital punishments by the Jewish people: stoning, burning, beheading, and choking. All four of those they did to Bilam. It says hargo achalaleya misis harba means many types of killings. Mashmu shetalu. So Rashi says, what does it mean? They hung him. But sisu eish tachtav. So and then he set a fire underneath him. At slivu they put him on a tzlav, on a cross, or hung him up. V'chatchu roishai, and then they cut his head off. V'naflu teicha eish, and his body fell into the fire. Is taleu hainechenek, when they hung him, that was choking. Chatichas haroish hereg, when they cut his head off, it was beheading. Kishnafel aretz, when he fell down, that's the type of stoning. Kishnafel ar hainusreifer, when he fell into the fire, is burning. Not everyone agrees with Rashi, because according to Rashi, he died by the beheading. Obviously, you don't behead. It means even though they burnt his body, but he didn't experience a death of all four. Others disagree with Rashi and say that it was really kind of a he was killed from four different people simultaneously. That he was choked, beheaded, burnt, and stoned all at the same time. That he died with all those four actions at the same time. But this Rashi seems to say that it was a process. The Ramah explains that the phrase "in the children of Israel" is superfluous in this verse. It serves to teach that his execution was carried out by means of four modes of execution practiced in the Jewish courts. Okay. I just want to bring down, it says over here, one opinion is that they say that halachically we're not allowed to kill someone four different deaths. Why did he have to be killed four different deaths? Because he was a kosem, he was a diviner, so it was hard to kill him. So they needed to come with all kind of ways to kill him. He brings down that like I said, there's some people say he was killed four different places, and also the question is who killed him. Well, I think we'll get to that in a second. A certain heretic says to Rabbi Chanina like this: Mishmiyah, did you ever hear, or do you know, Bilam bar Kama, how old was Bilam when he died? I don't know, doesn't say. But based on what it says in Tehillim chapter 50, that David says about people that are anshe damim umirma, people of blood and distasteful, is lo yechzi yomim, they don't live out half their life, and the normal life is 70 years. So I would assume bar tlasin utlas shnin or bar tlasin v'arba, that he was 33 or 34. So if he doesn't even live out half his life, and you're going to consider 70 years, so he doesn't live 75 years, so it's either he died at 74 or 73. So he said, Shaper Kamarti, you said right. L'didi chazili pinkasei de Bilam. He found, so to say, the diaries or the writings of Bilam. In those books it said, Bar tlasin utlashin Bilam chagira chad katel yasi pinchas l'sitra. That Bilam was lame, like we said, he was lame on one leg, was 32 years old. Bar tlasin utlas, he was 33 years old. When Pinchas, the hanged man, killed him. So Rashi says, Bar tlasin v'tlas, who's this? Reb Chanina, Leslie de Reb Simai Damalil. Based on this, that Reb Chanina said he was 32, 33, 34 years old, he doesn't agree with what we said last week, that Shloisha Hayubayis Eis the Pari Bilam Iav Yisra. We said last week that Bilam lived in the time of when the Jewish people were enslaved. According to Rab Simai, Bilam Chaya Yosmi min Masayim V'Esashanim, he would have to be at least 110 years, not 110, you have to add another 40. So he was 160 years, right? Because this story happened at the end of the 40 years. So, and if the Jewish people were 100, 210 years in exile, and he was part of, and again, he wasn't born then. So he was at least 210 years old. He was there when Pari decided to throw the Jewish people into the Nile. We have to say, according to Rab Simai, that Bilam was quite old by the time he was killed. So Rab Chanina, who says that he was 33, 34 years old, obviously disagrees with that idea. Chagira tirgam shapisach, he was limping. Kat katel yaseh pinchas l'sitra sar tzeva. If you look katlik echad min acher kol mecham nikol l'shma. Even if Pinchas himself didn't kill him, But the war was the war of Pinchas. Therefore, it was written in the diaries or in the books and the stories of Bilam that he was killed by Pinchas. According to those who quote that the reason why Rashi doesn't say Pinchas killed him is because we have also that that it's the Zohar that says there was a person called Tzelach that flew up and killed, used the name of God and killed. It's brought down also other places that they had a fly. He used the name of God. They had to kill him in a miraculous way. Just we said before that what is this idea that wicked people, don't live out half the years? What's the idea of half the years that we say in chapter Lo Yachzu Yamehem? Is that once a person lives out half their life and they're wicked, they're not going to return to good behavior. And he quotes also vice versa. Once a person lives out half their life and they're righteous, pretty much you could assume they would remain righteous. It's not a guarantee, but it's likely. Okay, Omrle Mar Berei de Ravina Livrei. So Ravina, Mar, the son of Ravina, said to his son, Bekululai Tafish Lemidrash Levarim Bilam HaRasha. All the other people we spoke about in the past few months, in a Chelek of the people don't have a portion of the world to come, the kings and the other peoples. So all of them you could do. You shouldn't do too much medrash, too much analyzation about them. Besides Bilam the wicked, the common the mishkachas be'dreishbe, as much as you can, find different things about him negative. Rashi says, "Bekulam malachim v'dyotis." The other people that are on the list, the people that don't have a share in the world to come. Loi tafish v'tidrush l'gnai. Don't try to bring out too much negativity about them. Levarmi Bilam, but Bilam, the kol mad mishkachas l'gnai t'droish. Whatever you could find negative about Bilam, talk about it. So he says, why? So other people say the reason is because according to some opinions, they did tshuva, and they do have a portion in the world to come. The Yad Ramah says that. I think that I saw that in the Yad Ramah. Either way, let's see what Reb Steinzer says. Since those who interpret the Torah metaphorically, like it says in 104, taught that all of them, other than Bilam, have a share in the world to come, it is only with regard to Bilam that is permitted to elaborate in condemning him. So the idea is that who do we try to condemn is according to some people that they darshan the medrash, and at the end they have a portion of the world to come, so don't talk too bad about them. But Bilam, we should talk as bad as we can because he's a horrible person and there's nothing good about him. Let's go a little bit into the next personality. So we finished Bilam. We have left Doeg and Achazi and Gehazi. Okay, so Doeg, who's Doeg? Doeg is the advisor. His name is Doeg HaEdomi. Why is he called the HaEdomi? Either because he behaved like Esav by killing the priests in Nov, or because he was a descendant from Edom. Again, David, the Jewish people had converts, so he could have been a convert from Edom. Either way, Doeg lives in the life of King Saul. He's loyal, evidently, to Saul. The Torah from the Gemaras we're going to learn now that Doeg was a great scholar. But he was very jealous of David. We learned already a few weeks ago that he slandered he praised David to Saul to arouse Saul's jealousy of David. So he was a manipulator. He later is the one who tells Saul that the city of Nov, the city of Kohanim, a priest that we learned about, that David was semi-responsible for causing that to happen by just being there. But either way, gives shelter to David and a sword. So Doeg goes and he kills all the Kohanim of Nov. So here we're talking about he's a big Rasha. He hates David. He's an enemy of David. We're going to see that David has zero pity for Doeg. When he talks about Anshi Damim Umirma, he means Achitophel and Doeg. He had two enemies. David had two enemies. One is Achitophel that we're going to learn about, which was his / father-in-law, also enemy advisor, complicated relationship. And he eventually sides with Avshalom, the son that rebels against David. And Doeg is before him, and he is Saul's advisor and becomes a murderer. But he murders all the Kohanim in the city of Nov. Again, we said the city of Nov is what people feel is either what's today French Hill in Jerusalem or Ramat Shlomo. But either way, so Doeg is this person. So it says v'chsiv Doeg uchsiv Doeg. We find different verses. Sometimes it says Doeg, and sometimes it says Doeg. So Rabbi Yochanan says, "V'tchila yeshiv hakadosh baruch hu v'doeg." In the beginning, God sat and He was concerned about what's going to be with Doeg. Maybe he's going to go off and become bad. And after that happens, he says, "Vai Doeg," like in the word "vai oi." Shiyatz that he went to the path of evil. So, meaning to say in the beginning, like everyone says, the idea is God doesn't take away free choice, but He saw that Doeg had the possibility of going off, and He was concerned, and then he went off. The word in Doeg, if you look, there's the Dalid and the Gimel, you have Vai. So Doeg is Vai, he's upset, he's sorry that what happened to Doeg. The Ramah apparently had a variant reading of the text. Explains initially before Doeg was born, God sat and was concerned that perhaps this wicked person would come into the world. And after he was born, God said, alas, it happened. Okay, let's just learn a little bit about Doeg before we finish the class. Gibor Rasha Tzadik Chayil V'Sofer. Okay, that's just a siman, a sign. Rabbi Yitzchak says as follows: what does it say? What does it mean when the verse says Ma tishalel b'ra hagibor? So it says, why boast of your evil mighty one? Chesed kel kol hayoim. The mercy of God endures continuously. So continually. Amalei kadosh baruch hu Doeg. What does this mean? God said to Doeg, Lo gibor b'torah. Are you not a giant? A gibor, a powerful person in Torah. Ma tishal b'ra. Why are you looking to the path of negativity, of bad, of evil? Lo chesed kel notu alecha kol hayoim. Do you not have the mercy that you threw your studying of Torah on you? Why are you going to the path of bad? Okay. This idea that God's speaking to Doeg doesn't mean necessarily it was a conversation that Doeg had with God as a prophecy, but so to say God talking about Doeg. You're a giant in Torah. Why are you looking to talk evil about David? He didn't stop talking evil about David to Saul. That is the Torah of Chesed is on his tongue. That's so. Why you're a giant in Torah? Why your tongue should not talk slander? Your tongue should talk Torah talk. Rabbi Yitzchak continued to say, the Mefarshim quote about this. What's this idea of the free choice of that God is Doeg, He's concerned, but He doesn't obviously interfere. Rabbi Yitzchak says, what does it mean? That to the wicked, to the evil person, God says, what are you declaring in my chukim, in my Torah, in the chukim, in the mitzvahs? God spoke. Now the Gemara calls him Doeg, the evil. Before it says the same Rabbi Yitzchak, he says Doeg. Now he's really calling him Doeg, the evil. Why are you talking about my chukim, about my mitzvahs? You sit there giving a shiur in Torah. Yeah, what about murder? Did you study about murder? You murdered all the kohanim and Nov. When you give a shiur about lashon hara, about slander, what are you going to say? You slandered David. Batisa brisi alepicha. What does that mean? Omer Abami ein teirasa shodaig ela misafu v'lachutz. Batisa brisi alepicha. The covenant of God was only on his mouth, but he didn't take it inwards. It didn't mean anything to him. He could give a drasha about something that had nothing to do with his own behavior. It says miratzchim shaharag noiv. Why does God mention murder? Because he killed all the priests of the city of Nov. Alpicha, the Torah is on his mouth. V'loy belev, it's not in his heart. Rabbi Yitzchak says, what does it say? V'yiru tzadikim v'yiro v'olav yischaku. That says, and the righteous shall see and fear, and shall I laugh at him? So betchila yiru v'soif yischaku. Initially, they will fear Doeg due to his success, and ultimately they will laugh when they witness his downfall. At first, God was concerned Rashi learned it differently, that God was concerned that people would look at Doeg and say, look at him, he's a horrible person, but he's successful. He's like, he's an important person by Saul. And after he fell from grace, and his end, which was we're going to see, it wasn't just an end. Even in death, he was punished. So then they'll be laughing. He says, initially, when the righteous saw Doeg prominence in Torah, they saw he was a giant in Torah, and his subsequent dismiss, they were in fear. Ultimately, when they saw that he merely paid lip service to Torah, they laughed. Okay. Let's go a little further. Yitzchak says, min chayil bala vayikeenu mibitna yairishanu kel. It says he has swallowed riches, and he shall vomit them again. God shall cast them out of his belly. What does this mean? It's a verse in Job. Amar David l'znei Kadosh Baruch Hu. David said to God, the Rebbeinu Shalom, Master of the universe, Yamas Doeg should die. Amar lo chayil bala v'yakenu. God said to him, he swallowed riches, and he shall vomit them again, meaning he's filled with Torah and wisdom. Wait until he forgets what he learned. It means David wanted him to die now. So God said to him, wait, he has a lot of Torah in him. Let him first forget that. God shall cast them out of his belly. It means God can remove the Torah knowledge from him before he will forget it on his own. We see clearly, we're going to see from here, David did not forgive Doeg. King David wanted Doeg to be punished. And even when God tried to argue, give him time, David said no. He says, God said, wait till he forgets his Torah. David said to God, don't wait for him to forget Torah on his own. You make him forget it. If that's the condition for him to stay alive, then cause him to forget his Torah. Rabbi Yitzchak says, what does it say? What does it mean? God shall likewise destroy you forever. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu David. God said to David, Nesi Doeg la'omadasi. We see the power God gives to King David, right? So God says to David, let Doeg enter the world to come. He's asking David to allow, because Doeg wronged, it's not a personal vendetta. David was the king. He was the anointed one. He went against the Mashiach Hashem. He killed the city of Nov on David's behalf, because of David, at David's expense. So God says to David, let him into the world to come. So David says to God, God shall likewise destroy you forever. In other words, let Doeg not have an eternal life. What does it mean? What does this mean that he says, he shall pluck you away and pluck you from your tent and root you out from the land of the living, Selah, forever. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, God said, Limru shmaitze be midrash mishmei. Let at least the yeshiva, Beis Medrash, give a Torah talk in the name of Doeg. He was a great Torah scholar. Amar lefanav, so David says to God, Yachacha v'yisachacha mi'el. He shall pluck you away and pluck you from the tent. In other words, let him completely be removed from the tent of Torah. I don't want him mentioned in the Beis Medrash. So God said, Levelei binyan rabbanan. Let his sons be sages. David said, no. And you root you out from the land of living. In other words, let Doeg be internally uprooted. Not his children should even have any success in Torah. Bei Midrash, what does it mean by Midrash? The oil of it's referring to the tent of the Beis Medrash. V'sharshchem eretz chaim sela, shayr shaloi techasech mi eretz chaim delay lahavelei banach rabbanon. David said his children should not be rabbis. We see later, it's very interesting, that God kind of is obviously giving David a strong say in the punishment of Doeg. But when we learned, if you remember a few months ago, that David himself was punished, right? The story of Yishbi Benov, that David was pursued by Goliath by Goliath, the giant who he killed, right? He killed in the story that in the beginning of his coming to prime, David is the young shepherd who kills Goliath, the giant, right? In the war of the Philistines with Saul. Goliath has a brother Yishbi who wants to avenge that. They're all family again. Orpah, his mother, is Ruth's sister-in-law. So it's all kind of within the family. But either way, what's God say? If you remember what God quotes over there, he says it's time for you to pay for what happened in Nov, and because of you, Doeg, the great Torah scholar, was killed. Means David stayed on his own. David did not forgive Doeg. Didn't want him in the base medrash. Didn't want him quoted. Any Torah that he studied or he taught should never be quoted. His children shouldn't be part of Torah. He should not be let in the world to come. And God had his reservations. David, you were there. You were the instrument that brought out the negativity of Doeg. You have to pay. David himself had to pay, and at the end, he had to choose between his own life and the life of his children. At the end, he chose his own life. But then we remember Avishai suggested that that's not a good idea. Let the children die, but David should live. Okay, let's stop over here. This continues into the story of, now we're going to kind of move into Doeg and Achitophel. Achitophel, again, was Doeg lived in the time of Saul, and Achitophel lived in the time of David's rule. We're going to see the Gemara says they didn't know each other. They both died young. It's very interesting because, again, Doeg dies young. When David says, chapter 50, La yechzu yameim, they shouldn't live half their life, it's referring to Doeg and Achitophel, not so much Bilam, like we said. And Achitophel is his father-in-law. He dies at 33, and he's the grandfather of Saul. If you remember correctly, we learned maybe a year or so ago in the Sanhedrin, we're trying to figure out exactly the age of Achitophel and Bathsheba and how old they all were, to see the earliest a woman could have children is based on the story of how old Achitophel was when he had Bathsheba. How old was Bathsheba when she married David, when she had Solomon? And because Achitophel dies at 35. All right, everyone. We'll continue this as Hashem next week. Thank you for joining. And Laila Tov.